Good morning, Westchester. Well, thank you for joining us as we work hard to protect our New York values. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize some of our very special guests who've joined us this morning. First of all, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the Democratic Conference Leader, our very own, Westchester's own. You'll be hearing from her momentarily. Newly elected Senator Shelley Mayer is here as well. Her colleague, Senator Jamal Bailey is here. Senator David Colucci's here. Assemblymember David Buchwald's here. Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff is here. Assemblywoman Ellen Japey. Assemblyman Gary Pretlow. Assemblyman Ken Zabrowski. I usually say hold your applause to the end, but you all seem to really want to clap for these people. So just go to town, have a good time with it. And of course, our outstanding new Westchester County Executive, George Latimer, is here. The great Mayor of Yonkers, Mike Spano, has joined us. Sheila Poole, the Acting Commissioner of Office of Children and Family Services. Sam Roberts, the Commissioner of Office of Temporary and Disability Services here. Thank you, Sam. Ruth Hazel Thompson, Special Advisor for Policy, Community Affairs, Housing, Community Rule. Denise Miranda, the Executive Director of the New York State Justice Center for the Protection of People with Special Needs is here. Vince Russell, the CEO of Planned Parenthood, Hudson Taconic. And all of our women's groups and advocates, local elected officials, and of course, our great friends in labor. Thank you for joining us this morning. Today, we'll first hear from Democratic leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins. Then we'll hear from Maria Imperial, the CEO of the YWCA White Plains in Central Westchester. And then, of course, we look forward to hearing from Governor Andrew Cuomo. For the past year and a half, you can give that a round of applause. You know, for the past year and a half, it's been really hard to watch as the progress we worked so hard for in New York State has been eroded by what's going on in Washington. And as you all just heard, we have an administration who's selected a nominee to the Supreme Court who is hell-bent on rolling back the protections of Roe v. Wade. Hey, I think it's pretty bad too. We've said for years this could possibly happen, right? And nobody believed that this day would come. Ladies and gentlemen, this day is here. And that's why we joined together. And we together in New York State will fight back. And fortunately for you in New York State, we have leadership who are committed to fighting to protect the women's right to choose and access to reproductive services. So I am extremely proud to be part of an administration who is fighting back. Governor Cuomo and I are not only protecting our progress from the federal government, but actually taking new action to strengthen reproductive rights in this state. We don't do it alone. We are joined by all of you as our partners to take back our state and our nation. And we're working together against these federal assaults. So please join me to hear more about our initiatives announced today in welcoming our incredible leader, Westchester's own Democratic leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins.
Yay, Westchester! Yay! I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for being a champion for women all over this state. Thank you, Kathy. And I am happy to be here because Westchester is one of the most incredible places for advocacy on every level. And when it comes to protecting women's rights, nobody stands up better than Westchester County. Am I right? You know, the last time, and you're going to hear from the governor who, again, has really been, you know, somebody who sees these things coming and does whatever he can do to make sure that the federal government, although it seems to be targeting New York State, just saying, at least, you know, he has, with the power of his pen in many executive orders, and he'll talk about that, mitigated some of the negative impacts. We shouldn't have to do that with women's health issues, though. We should be in a space in New York where we have made sure that women will never, ever have to worry about being in back alleys or worry about whether or not they will have contraceptive care. Because in 1970, the legislature, before Roe v. Wade, passed abortion laws in 1970. In 1970, with a Republican governor and a Republican state senate, New York State passed women's health laws that predated the federal government. 1970. And in 1970, people understood that it was not a partisan issue, because in 1970, 12 Republican senators joined their Democratic colleagues to make that happen. And now, we are facing a legislature, and my Senate colleagues, Senator Carlucci, Bailey, Senator Mayer, are here with my Assembly colleagues, Jaffe Zabrowski, Gallup, Pretlow, David, Buckwall. So David just kept coming up. And it's interesting because you would think that the Assembly has passed this, that the Senate could do that. Even George, when he was our senator, and Ruth, when she was our senator, we were all ready to do it. But right now, you should know, in 2018, I don't have one Republican colleague who will raise their hand and say, we have to protect women's rights, we have to codify Roe v. Wade. Is that okay? No. Okay. All right. So, I wanted to give you that because it's important that you understand where we are. That in 1970, we were a lot closer to women having the rights that they needed to have to live healthy, productive lives than we are right here in New York State in 2018. And when I started carrying the Reproductive Health Act in 2007, my colleagues told me there was not a problem and we should not have to codify anything because we were okay. And all of a sudden, since 2016, since November of 2016 specifically, and starting in January, we are no longer okay. We're not okay. But what we've done is awaken the sleeping giant. What we've done is redoubled our efforts to make sure that our voices are heard. What we've done is made sure that our organizations are fully ready to do what has to be done to educate and to make sure people are no longer asleep. What we've done is found a way to stand behind powerful leaders, and what we've done is stop sitting on the sidelines and saying, we will not go back. We're not going back. We can't go back. Too much is at stake. We will not go back. Our children will benefit from the work we've already done. So we got to be energized. We got to be ready. We've got to take on the fight. We've got to stand up. Stand up. Stand up now. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. And while you're standing, know that you are standing because I get to introduce one of the most powerful female leaders in Westchester County who makes sure that women's needs are met from early childhood to whatever you want to do as a grown-up. You get to stand up behind organizations like the YWCA of White Plains, and I get to announce its CEO, Marie Imperiali. Keep standing for Marie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, State Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and also Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul. As State Senator Cousins told you, for 10 years I've had the privilege of serving as the CEO of the YWCA White Plains and Central Westchester. Our mission is eliminating racism and empowering women. I am also a proud member of the Westchester Women's Agenda, and I see many of my sisters here. Also a proud resident of the great city of Yonkers. Thank you, Mayor Spano. When I was coming here today, I had a vivid memory of when I was in first grade, and I remember watching my mother getting dressed to go to a wake for a mother of one of the girls I went to school with. And I knew my mother wasn't very close with the family, but I know she wanted to pay her respects. And I watched her get dressed, and I saw her come home from the wake, and I could see that she had tears in her eyes, and my mother was very stoic. She never, I think I maybe only saw her cry maybe 2 times in my life. And that memory stayed with me, and I felt so very vulnerable that night, thinking that another little girl could lose her mother. And I also felt grateful that I still had my mother. So years later, I was talking to my mother, and I told her, I remember that day when you went to Patty's mother's funeral. I said, it stayed with me. And she said, Mija, I didn't tell you then, but now you're older, and I want you to know that Patty's mother died because she was having an abortion. That memory has stayed with me, and it brings me here today. And it reminds me of the need we have to fight to keep abortion safe, and to protect the future for our daughters and all the girls of Westchester County, New York State, and the United States. One of the things today that I am proudest of is that I am a New Yorker. I am extremely grateful to Governor Cuomo for all he has done to advance women's rights in the state, starting from day one. We have passed the most comprehensive paid family leave act in the nation. He has also championed, and hopefully it's just a matter of time, that we're going to pass the Women's Opportunity Agenda, which includes, most importantly, the codification of Roe v. Wade. Thank you so much, Governor Cuomo. It's now a pleasure for me to introduce the 56th Governor of the State of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, it's my pleasure to be here in Westchester because it is my residence and I love it. We miss George Latimer in Albany, but I'll tell you the truth, living in Mount Kisco, I'm much more happy with George Latimer as the county executive. George Latimer. Mayor Spano, thank you very much for having us today. Let's give him a round of applause. We have our great Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul. Thank you very much, Kathy. We have the next majority leader of the Senate who's here with us, and a great senator, Andrea Stewart-Cousins. A women's champion, Maria Imperiali. Pleasure to be with her. And to my colleagues in the Senate and the Assembly, and to all the advocates and the people who've worked so hard to make Westchester the progressive county that it is once again. Isn't that nice to say? Westchester, the progressive county. You know, this is a little bit like Groundhog's Day over this past year and a half. Every day you wake up and you're shocked and surprised by what the federal government is doing. And it's as if every day we relive the same trauma. I was listening to the Talking Heads last night, not my brother's show, because that's a deep, insightful show. The other shows. And they were talking about the Supreme Court nominee, obviously, and one of the really robust conservatives who was just very proud of this nomination said, well, you know, the American people have to get over it because elections have consequences. And we elected a pro-life president, and that's what he is going to do, and that's the agenda he's going to follow. And it was like a little shocking the way it was said, but it was also true. We have a problem in New York appreciating it, and that's why we have these constant shocks to the system. But we elected an extreme conservative president, an extreme conservative administration that has unleashed an extreme conservative movement all across the country. That's what we have done. Yes, it's a daily shock to our system. How could they possibly be doing this? Because it's totally repugnant to everything we are and everything we believe. But that is what happened. They are extreme conservative. One of the reporters said to me, well, why do you call them extreme conservatives? I said, 2 reasons. Number 1, because they're extreme. Number 2, because they're conservative. But they're extreme conservative. They have their views, and they're going to impose their views on you. On you. They have their views about what religion is right and wrong, what lifestyle is right and wrong, what sexuality is right and wrong, who should be an immigrant, and who's right and who's wrong. They have their views. And in a great act of hypocrisy, they then are going to use the federal government to impose those views on you. It's a great act of hypocrisy because the conservative movement was supposed to be limited government, small federal government, let people live their lives, individual rights, state rights. No, they've now taken what's convenient for them, which is conservative government unless they're in charge. Then it's actually a very aggressive, big government. But that's who they are. And they get up and they do it every day. They're anti-Muslim. That was the travel ban right from the beginning. They are anti-union. Supreme Court passed the Janus decision. Why? Because they are anti-union. That's who they are. They are with management. They are with the rich. That's why they did a tax code change that gave all the benefits, 80% to the top 1%. They were against unions because they were against collective bargaining. And they don't want the employees to have strength at the bargaining table. That's who they are. They are pro-life because they are pro-life. That's what we elected. So we're shocked every day. Yes, and we should be. But that's where we are. Elections have consequences. Now, Senator Stewart-Cousins is exactly right. They woke the sleeping giant. By the way, I think for a whole generation of young people, they now understand elections have consequences, and not just minor consequences, but these go to fundamental values of who we are and what we believe and how we live. And that's what's happening. Now, the Supreme Court nominee, they're going to play a game. You have to prove that he said he's going to overrule Roe v. Wade. That's the game they're starting to play. Go through his decisions and find where Kavanaugh said, I'm going to overrule Roe v. Wade. Well, it's a game. It's a game they're playing with themselves. Because I have a witness and testimony that is irrefutable, called the President of the United States of America, who said, I am only going to nominate justices for the Supreme Court who are pro-life, and I have a list that I'm going to put out so all the good conservative pro-life groups can sign off on everyone on the list, and they did. And this is a pro-life justice who, I believe, there's no question, will overturn Roe v. Wade the first chance they get. That is what they are going to do because that's who they are. And that's what they said. And it's not Groundhog Day. Elections do have consequences. And we lost. And they're trying to change this nation. Now, in the meantime, what do? We do everything we can to resist the rollback. They want to end unions. We're going to do everything we can to protect unions and stop the Janus decision. They want to stop immigrants because they're now anti-immigration. They want to close the door because we're all immigrants, right? Unless you're a member of the Sioux or another Native American tribe, you are an immigrant. But now they've decided that they want to close the door. And they have that anti-immigration policy, which they took to a grotesque, inhumane, and illegal extent with the separation of children. Separation of children. They knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted a deterrent. They wanted to strike fear into the hearts of people who were coming over the border. So what they have said is, if you come over the border, we're going to take your children from you, and we're going to separate you from the children. They knew all along what was going to happen. The president then took political heat and signed an executive order. We're going to reunite them in family detention centers. They knew darn well you can't reunite in family detention centers because there was already a federal law that said you can't put a child in a detention center. It was all a farce. They can't put the children in detention centers. The federal law already said that. They wanted to say to families, we're going to separate you from your children. Now they have a federal court that says to them, you will have to reunite children within 20 days, 30 days, depending on the age. And they said, well, we can't figure out how to do it. They knew exactly what they were doing all along. And New York has to be the bulwark against it. New York has to pass a law that codifies Roe v. Wade before they overrule it. Now, and Senator Stuart Cousins is exactly right. We have a law that we say codifies Roe v. Wade. Senator's exactly right. The Republican Senate wouldn't pass it. And you know what they said for years? Oh, it's wholly unnecessary, because we have Roe v. Wade, and nobody would ever overturn Roe v. Wade. That could never happen, 1973. Why do you need a state law when you have Roe v. Wade? And we said, well, who knows? The world is a crazy place. Maybe you could even overturn Roe v. Wade. And they said, don't be silly. That could never happen. Well, the world is that crazy a place. We do not have a New York state law that provides the protections of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade goes further than the New York state law. And the New York state law is in the criminal code. That's why we desperately need a New York state law that codifies the Roe v. Wade rights in this state and takes it out of the criminal code. Now, the Republicans in the Senate play a game. You talk to them individually, reporters in the back go to them individually, they say, oh, I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-choice. I would vote to protect a woman's right to choose. But the bill never came up for a vote. Otherwise, I would have voted for it. It's like they do in Washington. I voted for it before I voted against it, but then it was changed and I voted in favor of it. Who controls whether or not the bill came up for a vote? The Republican leader. So they want to have it both ways. They want to be able to say, oh, I support a woman's right to choose. But then when they go to a different audience, the conservative audience, they want to be able to say, I never voted pro-choice. That's exactly what they're doing. And they got away with it for years. And what we have to say is, no more. No more. No more. No more, Senator. If you support a woman's right to choose, you call your Senate leader, Mr. Flanagan, and say you want to go to Albany and you want to pass that bill because a woman's right to choose is in jeopardy. It's yes or no. It's black or white. It's binary. There is no middle. There is no maybe. There is no, well, when it comes up, we'll see, we'll discuss. No, it's today. It's today. And they have drank the Trump Kool-Aid. Because they have. 1970, Republicans supported a woman's right to choose. 1970, before Roe v. Wade in 1973, New York was one of the first states to pass a bill with Republicans. These Republicans are more conservative than the Republicans we had in 1970. That's what they're saying to you, that they will not support a Roe v. Wade bill for New York. Now, in the meantime, we're going to do everything we can. I'm going to sign an executive order that protects a woman's right to contraception in the state of New York, despite any insurance company or bureaucracy. But we have to learn the lesson. Elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. We have to learn that lesson. And we have to organize, and we have to mobilize, and we have to put that question to every senator who is running. We have to call the U.S. senators and say, don't you dare confirm Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court and call yourself a Democrat. Don't you dare. And we have to get it done this year. I call on every Senate Republican to come back to Albany, do it tomorrow. The Assembly will support codification of Roe v. Wade. I will sign the bill. The Senate Democrats will vote 100% in favor of it. Come back and pass Roe v. Wade for New York. There are no excuses. And if you do not come back and vote, that is your answer. You are telling the women and men of this state you are anti-choice. That's the statement you're making by not coming back to pass the law. No one gets a pass. There is no amnesty. You're either with us or you're against us. And in the words of Mr. Trump, in the words of President Trump, if you are against a woman's right to choose, you're fired. Thank you, and God bless you.
Here you go. Guys, keep filing.